Hello, welcome to Mushabbar from the capital of Sweden, Stockholm. Why it is difficult to find accommodation in whole Sweden. This video is very important for the newcomers who are planning to move to Sweden or who have already arrived in Sweden and they are looking for new accommodation. Accommodation is an issue in Sweden. It is not easy to find accommodation in Sweden. Even for the people who are living in Sweden for many years, accommodation is an issue for them. It is not easy for them to rent out first-hand accommodation from landlords. It is simply because there is shortage of accommodation and there are not many options available. In most places in Sweden and especially in big cities, there is a queue system. So if you want to rent out accommodation directly from the landlord, it will take a long time. I know in Stockholm, in some places, you have to wait for more than 30 years, 30 years to find a first-hand contract. But in some areas, if you go a little bit outside from Stockholm city, then maybe you can find accommodation just within 5 to 10 years. But still you have to wait in many places like 5 years. So when you are coming to Sweden as a newcomer, it is really difficult for you to find out an accommodation directly from the landlord as a first-hand contract because you have to wait in a queue. You have to be in the queue and you are not in the queue. So it's not possible for you. And those kind of living rights is called HYRESRÄTT. If you want to know what kind of living and ownership rights people can have in Sweden, then you should watch my previous videos. I have described there what is HYRESRÄTT, BOSTADRÄTT and ÄGANDERÄTT. So these are the three types of living and ownership rights. And most people in Sweden, I guess above 80%, I have not counted, but I guess above 80%, they have either HYRESRÄTT or BOSTADRÄTT. If you are coming from abroad to Sweden, then it is really difficult for you to get HYRESRÄTT. You can get BOSTADRÄTT in some places, not in all places, because there is also a queue system for the BOSTADRÄTT, but then you have to invest a huge amount of money. And most people who are coming from abroad, they are not sure if they can invest such a huge money. And the third kind of ownership right, which is ÄGANDERÄTT, ÄGANDERÄTT, sometimes my pronunciation is not good enough. There you have to even invest more. Since as a newcomer, you are not able to get first-hand contract from some landlord as a HYRESRÄTT or as a BOSTADRÄTT, when you arrive in Sweden, because you have to stand in a queue and you are not in a queue, you can't wait for 5 years, you need accommodation now. So what options you have then? As a newcomer to Sweden, in most cases, you are left with two options. Option number one, you can rent out as a second hand from someone. And option number two, you have to buy some property and you can have the ÄGANDERÄTT, you can own that property, but you need a huge sum of money, several millions kron to do that. And for the first option, if you want to go for the first option, and I think most people when they come to Sweden, they only have the first option because they don't have millions of krona, or even if they have, they don't want to maybe invest millions of krona in Sweden. So they are looking for second-hand property. And there are now more surprises that are going to come. Maybe as a newcomer to Sweden, you don't know that most of the people in Sweden, they have either HYRESRÄTT and BOSTADRÄTT. Probably they are more than 80% of the population. I don't know exactly, but probably they are more than 80% of the population. And maybe you can get even more surprised by knowing that by default, they cannot even rent out their property. So even if they have a space available, they cannot rent you legally as a second hand. It's illegal in Sweden. In Sweden, there are certain rules and regulations that everyone has to comply, and HYRESRÄTT and BOSTADRÄTT follows those regulations. The basic principle is that when people have HYRESRÄTT contract or BOSTADRÄTT contract, they don't own the property. They are just renting the property to live. They have the living rights. They don't have the right to rent out as a second hand. So 80% of the people in Sweden by default, they cannot rent out even if they have the property. So as a newcomer to Sweden, you have really very limited options, and that's why the prices are going up in Sweden when you want to rent, and it is becoming expensive. And there are reasons that why they cannot rent out, because it is not their property, it is the property of the association who are managing this property. And if they rent out as a second hand to someone, it is going to cost money to the association. They are going to become the burden on the other people who are not renting out. So that's why it's illegal. There are several other reasons. Maybe in some other video I will explain. So basically you can ignore this 80% of the options that you have. There are of course some exceptions where they can rent out, as I have mentioned already in my previous videos, that if they are moving abroad from Sweden for less than 2 years, then they can rent out for about 2 years. And there are also some other exceptions. But from a holistic point of view, you can ignore those 80% of the properties. You cannot rent them out from legal point of view. I know many people in Sweden are renting out properties from HYRESRÄTT and BOSTADRÄTT, and in many cases it's completely illegal, and that's why sometimes they don't allow them to register their address in the Skatteverket here, which is the population register in Sweden. And people have sometimes problem when they rent out those properties. So when you see something is too good in Sweden, it's probably scam or probably illegal stuff. From legal point of view, of course, in some cases you can also get second-hand contract from those who have the HYRESRÄTT contract or BOSTADRÄTT contract, but those are, as I said, exceptions, and you need permission from the association, people from the organization that manages those property. So it's not the same person that makes that agreement with you as a second-hand rent out. It has to be association who has to approve, and they are really very strict to approve. So basically you are left with only one major option when you want to rent out property as a second hand contract. You should rent out from that person who is the true owner of the property, meaning that he should have ÄGANDERÄTT. As I told you earlier that more than 80% of the property in Sweden, they have either HYRESRÄTT contract or BOSTADRÄTT contract. And only less than 20% of people, they are the true owner of the property and they have this ÄGANDERÄTT. Due to the shortage of accommodation, there is a lot of construction going on everywhere in Sweden, and nowadays there are many companies who are building those kind of properties or apartments who have the full ownership right, meaning that they have ÄGANDERÄTT. So they are ägarlägenhet. So I think when you are coming to Sweden, when you are moving to Sweden, you should think about when you are renting out, if you are renting out correctly from a legal point of view or not, because if you are not, there could be issues. As a newcomer to Sweden, when you are going to rent your place to live, you have to consider many more things. And if I will talk about all those things in this video is going to be too long. Maybe I will create more videos to talk about other things that you should consider. How you can get out from any kind of scam or from any kind of false agreement. What is the secure way to rent out property? Nowadays, there are multiple options in Sweden. There are multiple service providers that can help you to rent out property that is correct from legal point of view, and I think you can contact them. I will talk about them in my future videos. You can also rent out directly. It could get a bit cheaper because you don't pay extra service fee, but then it is more risky for you because as a newcomer you don't know what may happen in Sweden when you are renting out second hand. But if you are clever, you can rent out directly without using any kind of service provider. And also there are other things that I mentioned before that you have to think about, because if you are going to damage the property, what things you should consider when you are going to rent the property. Because if you are going to make some kind of serious mistake, or even not serious mistake, you can end up with lot of penalties, or you may have to pay lot of money to maintain the property. For example, if you are going to do some kind of minor damage, even a minor damage, that could cost you a lot of money. So all of these things you need to think about, but I will talk those things in my future videos. If you need something special, please write your comments in the comment section under this video. Thank you to all of you. Goodbye. If you like this video, please share this video to the whole world. Spread this video everywhere. We are confident that this channel is going to have a huge impact. This channel is going to change some of the lives of the people. So please subscribe to this channel and press the bell icon and stay tuned. Thank you to all of you. Goodbye.